ES Audio. From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rachel Abbott and this is The Leader. Today we're giving you some bonus content taken from our business show, How to Be a CEO. An opportunity to hear from the most powerful people behind some of the biggest brands in the world. This is a cut-down version of Fiona Cannon OBE from the Lloyds banking group speaking to David Marsland. To hear the full thing, hit the link in the show notes. Find a new episode of How to Be a CEO every Monday morning, and why not give it a rate and follow whilst you're there. Now, let's begin.
Now, we're meeting Fiona over Zoom, and the first thing I want to talk to her about is the push for diversity actually happening, or are people just talking about it?
I certainly think that progress is being made. There's no question about that. I started my career a long time ago looking at gender equality. And if I think about where we are now compared to where we were, say, 30 years ago, there's no question that we've made progress. And if you look at gender specifically, for example, even over the last decade, if you think about the numbers of women on boards, for example, 10 years ago it was about 12%. It's 39% today. And so you can see that there has been real change at board level. There's also been progress in terms of women in leadership positions. But I guess what I would say is that progress is slower than we might have liked. If you look across other diverse groups, so in terms of Black, Asian and minority ethnic colleagues, again, progress, but really slow, particularly in terms of Black heritage community, in terms of leadership positions. And so I think there's still a lot more to be done there. Mental health, of course, and how we approach mental health has dramatically changed over the last few years, and much more understanding and awareness of mental health, and the fact that we all have mental health and we're all on some kind of spectrum from surviving to thriving at any one point. And so I think there's been a lot of work, a lot of progress made there. But I would say in terms of physical disability, there's still an awful lot of stigma around that. And we have very few role models of people with physical disabilities in senior leadership positions in organisations. So I think the picture is mixed. Still, you will see that there are still barriers to all of those groups of people in terms of getting into leadership positions. And so I think lots of progress made, much more to be done.
Why is business still this stronghold of straight white men?
So I think one of the big issues is, I think we spent quite a lot of time what I would call trying to fix the women, or trying to fix our Black, Asian and minority ethnic colleagues, rather than trying to fix the system. So the fundamental thing that's a problem is that actually we're not set up as organisations to have diversity. If you think about the way we're all set up, we're basically factories that were kind of, set up really on the basis of one person being in the office, one person being at home, and that person in the office typically was a man, for example, and the person at home was typically a woman. And that's how all of our structures are made up, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, commute into the centre of town. And of course, now the pandemic has really thrown all of that up in the air. But that's how we're all organised. And so what that means is that you're always trying to push diversity into a system that doesn't actually work. The fact is it doesn't work for a lot of men either, because that's really changed too. More men want, for example, to be involved in taking care of their family in the same way as women and doing other things. We have a system now, the way we're organised, that actually doesn't work for anybody. And we've kind of accepted it from a customer perspective. If you think about the fact that, we understand that 9 till 3 as we used to work in the banking industry in terms of opening hours doesn't work anymore, because customers want to be able to access their money when they want to be able to access their money. And so we understand that things have changed from that perspective, but we haven't made that change necessarily into the way that we organise ourselves in terms of our people and how we actually organise the workplace as well. And so I think that system change that's the biggest issue.
I mean, you've literally written the book on agility. Let's give you a plug, the agility mindset that you wrote. But is it difficult to go into businesses, I guess particularly maybe larger businesses which have had firm structures, and effectively say to them, you need to deconstruct all the things that made you successful?
So I think my starting point would be that for companies to continue to be successful, they need to change the way they're operating. So, the world has changed. It had changed before the pandemic. It's changed even more since the pandemic. But if you look at some of the things that we were just talking about, then customer needs have changed. I mean, who of us isn't kind of up in arms if our delivery doesn't arrive within a day, if not within an hour of having ordered it? The customer demands requirements on organisations to be much more agile in the way that they operate. And of course, again, more globalisation. Again, the pandemic's had an impact on that, but globalisation has meant that we need to be operating in different ways that goes outside of the norm of 9 to 5. Huge change in demographics. So we've now got 5 generations in the workforce, all of whom have got different needs that we need to be able to meet as organisations. I think the reality is that for any organisation to remain competitive, they need to be agile, and we know that organisations are able to respond to that. There is a real sweet spot, though, to be had, because at the same time as organisations need to want agility, employees want agility as well. So there's a real sweet spot in the middle that we can get to if we're smart. One of the reasons why I think flexible working, as it was traditionally called, hasn't been as successful as we would have hoped. Now, because I was part of something called the Women Work and Parents Task Force, but way back looking at introducing the flexible working legislation, and we had huge hopes for that. But I think one of the reasons why it hasn't worked so successfully is because we haven't made the changes to the system. And so what ends up happening is that flexible working ends up being seen as an employee benefit, not as a benefit to the business. It's about an individual rather than about the organisation. And so you're always just trying to, fit someone with a different working pattern into an organisation that doesn't work like that. So there's always going to be a tension there. And so I think for those and there are lots of organisations out there who are working in a very agile way, being very successful doing so. But I think it is a competitive business advantage now for organisations to be agile. And the beauty of it is that employees want it as well. We've just got to find that sweet spot.
I mean, in your own career, you have a very high up position in one of the biggest banks in the country. But have you had to fight to work the way that you think works best yourself? Actually,
I have to say that my own experience of working in an agile way, within Lloyds has been, they've been brilliant. Now, on one level, you might say that my job is the kind of job that, if I can't do it, then we might have an issue. But I think having worked flexibly, it's given me an insight into both sides, both working as an individual working flexibly, but also then on the other side of it, as I'm running my own team, what does that mean for how you kind of organise yourselves as well? But Lloyds, no, there's been no issue for me from Lloyds' perspective around working flexibly.
You spoke earlier on about how things are changing, particularly to do with mental health. What sort of improvements have been made? I mean, how much are companies now looking at the mental health of their workforces, and what advantages does that bring?
Organisations, there's no question that organisations are now looking at this in a more systemic way than they have been done before. So, for example, working with Mind charity, they've launched the Mental Health at Work commitment. And that started with about 20 companies signed up to it. I actually couldn't even tell you what the right number is now, but the last time I looked, it was something like 20,000 organisations signed up to the Mental Health at Work commitment. And that commitment means that people have to do a number of things, which includes both raising awareness within your organisation, but listening to your colleagues with mental health issues as well, to really understand what needs to be done. And so I think at a UK level, the issues about mental health are well understood, and most organisations now are really understanding that. And again, if you look at the numbers, I mean, one in four of us will experience mental health at some time over our lives. And so, we know that if you don't tackle that, there is a cost to the economy, and mental and mind, for example, has estimated that about £99 billion cost to the economy, because people might be off work. They're not as productive as they would otherwise be. And so really there's a very clear understanding that tackling this issue will make a big difference, both to the productivity of organisations, but also to the productivity of the UK as well.
For all the latest news, interviews and features, go to standard.co.uk/business. How to Be a CEO is back on Monday morning. Give us a follow on your podcast provider and start your week with us.